Ever since I was a little boy, I was always getting into trouble. If there was a dangerous situation, I'd find it. If there was a tree too big to climb, I'd climb it. If there were waters too deep to swim, I would swim them. That's the kind of kid I was. I'm sure you can imagine what a worry I was for my mother. Well, as I got older, I was always getting into trouble still. And what started as cute little mischievous toddler type of troubles turned into bad teenager-type troubles. I used to stay out all hours and sneak in through my bedroom window. I've been sneaking in and out of my windows since I was 12. I was long and skinny, just perfect for sneaking in and out of those tiny basement bedroom windows. There was a pool hall down the street from where I lived. It was on the rougher side of things, for sure, but me and my friends, we knew everybody there. We'd play pool, foosball, darts, anything we wanted. We didn't drink or buy booze, but I guess technically we were underage just to be in there. I wasn't allowed to go there, so I'd often sneak over with my friends. That was just one of the things I regularly did that I wasn't supposed to do. The place itself was dark and dingy, but we felt so grown up just being in there. A lot of teenage years were spent in that pool hall, and as I got older and got more freedom, my ventures got more and more out there too. I'd try anything and everything to do with an adrenaline rush. My friends and I all saved up to go to this outdoor camp when we were 14. There was a huge zip line over the woods that we were just dying to try. It was the biggest one around, and we were all thrill chasers. Well, from there, we did rock climbing, jumping out of airplanes when we were 18, mountain biking over cliff tops, snowboarding and skiing in the winter. I was what you'd call an adrenaline junkie. My mom just kept telling me, "You have to slow down. When are you going to try and meet a nice girl and settle down? No one's going to want to marry somebody who's likely to kill themselves being silly." She had a lot of opinions on the matter. My friend Dan and I, we decided that we wanted to build an ice fishing shack. Dan was married with a 1-month-old at home, so he was kind of looking for a place that he could escape to. And there was a huge lake a couple hours' drive north of us, and it was known as a great fishing spot with a wide variety of fish. We decided that we wanted our shack to be the biggest and best around. We built it from scratch with a solid bottom, except of course for the hole in the middle, wood sides, a nice high roof so we could stand up. We even put bunker-style beds near the top of the shack so that they were off the floor. They doubled as benches during the day. Well, we didn't put any windows in because we wanted it to stay as warm in there as possible. We had a little solar-powered heater that we used when it got too cold. We'd spend a lot of time out there, too. We had our tunes, our booze, our conversation, sitting over that hole waiting for a bite. When things got bad for Dan at home after a big fight, he asked if I was free to hit the shack for the weekend. So we drove up that Friday afternoon, but little did we know we would be there a lot longer than we thought. The weather had definitely started to warm up, but we had no idea how much it had affected the top layer of ice on the lake. The lake was a hidden jewel. Not many people knew that it was even there. Access to it was really off a beaten track, and without my 4x4 Jeep, we would never have been able to make it there to start with. Well, that afternoon we pulled up to the lake and we had a look around, and I noticed the edge of the lake seemed a little thawed. Well, I had meant to check the weather and a website that was strictly for gauging ice thickness for these types of situations, but I forgot to check it in the rush to leave, and now neither of us had internet access on our phones. Dan said, "I don't know, it looks a little too thawed. We're pretty far out there, and if something were to happen—" "Oh, come on, where's your sense of adventure?" I told him. Dan wasn't one to stand down from a dare or a challenge, so he shrugged his shoulders and said, "I'm sure it'll be fine." So we hauled our gear out to the shack and made ourselves at home. We drank our faces off that night. The whiskey was flowing, and so was Dan's venting. He had a lot to get off of his chest. He was feeling guilty that he wasn't particularly bonding with the baby and that he was no longer his sweetheart's priority. He talked about how much he missed his now exhausted, cranky wife. He was hoping things would settle down. I reminded him that newborns are a lot of work, but babies grow up. Things get easier. He was grateful that I was just there to listen. We both ended up passing out stone cold on our upper bunkers. Well, next thing I remember is opening my eyes and feeling weird, like something was off. First, it was the splitting headache, and then the squinting to adjust to the brightness. But then I noticed something else. I had swung my legs over the edge of the bunk only to feel my toes touch ice-cold water. It snapped me awake, and I pulled my feet back up. One look down and I thought, uh-oh. Through the night there must have been some major cracking in the ice. Our shack had started to sink. It was already partially submerged, and from first glance it looked like the shack was submerged enough that we couldn't get the door open. I yelled for Dan to wake up. He shook his head and I warned him, "Do not put your feet down." When he looked, he instantly went pale. He was not the risk-taker that I was. It seemed like a hole had formed around the shack and it just swallowed part of it up. I couldn't help but laugh. Dan had come here to vent about his problems and to get a break from the stress, and here we were completely hungover and trapped under ice. Well, sadly, our backpacks had been on the floor. They were now submerged in water, which meant that our food, more importantly our cell phones, well, they were all drenched in ice-cold water, so we couldn't even call for help if we wanted to. We kept hearing the shack groan and felt it shift slightly, which was very unnerving. We were worried. It was daytime now, meaning the temperature would rise even further. If that hole widened even a little bit more, the shack could slide down into the icy depths of the lake. We'd be carried down with it. We decided the first order of business was to try and get the door open. We discussed beforehand what the best way to approach it would be, and the shack was no longer straight. It was submerged mainly right where the door was, and it looked like the edge of the hole was tight against it. Well, we didn't want to push too hard, lest it crack the ice even further, because the hole could widen and swallow up the entire shack in an instant. We didn't want to put any extra weight on the shack's floor either, so we reached one of our fishing nets and used the handle of it to try and push on the door, which wouldn't budge. More concerning was the shift we felt when we did it, so we quickly abandoned that idea. We both flopped back down onto our bunks and tried to brainstorm a way out of this crazy situation. We couldn't phone for help, couldn't even see outside to see how thawed the lake was, and we didn't even have any food handy. We knew where our backpacks were, though, under the water, so we used the net handle again to try and reach underneath and hook one of the bags. We tried that for hours, but soaking wet, the bags were just too heavy. They kept sliding off the handle back into the water with a splash. Almost giving up, we finally were able to pull Dan's bag out. We'd brought some freeze-dried camping meals that just needed hot water. Obviously, that was not something we had access to, so we had some much undercooked chili and stir-fry for dinner. Yeah. We were grateful when the night rolled around. At least then we know the temperatures would be dropping so we could relax for a little bit. Needless to say, we did not sleep well that night. Every sound made us jump. Although we knew we were the safest we'd be at night, when it was colder and the ice would refreeze a little, it was still not relaxing in the slightest. It wasn't until the third day that we finally got out of that shack. We'd woken up to the sound of an engine and started yelling and screaming for help. But by that point, the shack was even more submerged and it seemed to be hooked on one side of the hole. Good thing, too, because otherwise it would have sunk straight down. The truck was full of young guys on a bachelor party camping trip. They called 911 for us, and we were rescued within an hour of them spotting us. After that, I decided my days of flirting with danger were over, and no one was more happy to hear that than my mom. To watch more animated story videos like this, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments section what you thought about this story.